Now with a look at all the latest stories making the headlines this evening with the ITV News.
Good evening. Flags are flying at half-mast tonight at the White House to mark the passing of former US President Jimmy Carter, who has died at the age of 100. A Democrat and former governor of Georgia, he served from 1977 until 1981 and was the longest-living former president in US history. Elected in the wake of the Watergate scandal and Vietnam War, he served for a single term before losing to Ronald Reagan. But it was after leaving office that many believe he built an even greater legacy for his humanitarian work. Our correspondent Robert Moore looks back on his life.
Jimmy Carter was last seen, ever so frail, being brought out to witness a flypast to mark his 100th birthday. A tribute to the oldest president in American history, and to a man whose post-presidential career was seen as inspirational.
My name is Jimmy Carter, and I'm running for president.
He was one of America's most unlikely presidents.
I'm a Southerner.
A peanut farmer from Georgia, whose very obscurity was one of his greatest strengths.
Running for president, I want to ask you to help me next year.
For in scandal-weary America, in the aftermath of Watergate and the Nixon resignation, the honest and deeply religious Southerner promised a different type of politics.
I'll never tell a lie. I'll never make a misleading statement.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear.
He was America's 39th president, taking office in 1977.
This is a change in the schedule. He's walking.
His famous decision to abandon his cavalcade and walk to the White House was seen to symbolize a more accessible leader. But amid an energy crisis and rising oil prices, the US economy took a succession of hits, leading to long lines at petrol stations and a very un-American sense of pessimism.
For the first time in the history of our country, a majority of our people believe that the next 5 years will be worse than the past 5 years.
But on foreign policy there was an unexpected success. The Camp David Accords that saw a peace deal between Egypt and Israel, America's single greatest diplomatic achievement in the Middle East. An agreement that survived even this past tumultuous year in the region.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be the children of God.
But then came the moment that sealed Carter's fate as a one-term president and turned him into a symbol of weakness. The Iranian Revolution brought a hard-line, clerical, anti-US regime to power. And in November 1979, the US embassy in Tehran was stormed, and 66 US diplomats were taken hostage.
Day 415 of the hostage crisis.
It was a humiliation for America, compounded by Jimmy Carter ordering a rescue mission that ended in disaster, and a crash in the Iranian desert that left US commandos dead. It was no surprise that Ronald Reagan, promising better times, won in a landslide election in 1980. But Jimmy Carter's best years were still ahead of him. If his presidency was deeply flawed, his legacy as a social activist gained him deep respect.
Yeah, you're quite slick with that.
In 2002, he won the Nobel Peace Prize for his tireless campaigning for the underprivileged. His stamina was remarkable. He had liver cancer, which spread to his brain, and still he recovered.
I just thought I had a few weeks left. But I was surprisingly at ease.
He became recently the longest living former president in American history. Even in old age, Carter could be seen contributing to the one project closest to his heart, building homes for the poor. Even a fall would not stop him helping those less fortunate. He continued to speak out, lambasting the presidency of Donald Trump.
You can decide whether you want to be generous or stingy. You can decide whether you want to be a liar when it's your benefit, to your benefit, or always tell the truth.
Faith was at the heart of Jimmy Carter's identity. He was a farmer from Georgia who became a president, and in his final greatest act, a humanitarian who rehabilitated his reputation.
So I'm ready for anything and looking forward to a new adventure.
Well, let's go to Robert in Washington now. Robert, what reaction has there been so far?
Well, Democrats and Republicans uniting tonight in paying tribute to Jimmy Carter. Joe Biden saying that America and the world has lost an extraordinary leader, statesman and humanitarian. Donald Trump, the president-elect, has said that America should pray for the Carter family and said that this nation owes Jimmy Carter a debt of gratitude. But there is also tonight a sense of poignancy and irony. Jimmy Carter was a fierce critic of Donald Trump's and yet lived long enough to see Trump re-elected to the White House. His greatest achievement was in the Middle East, and yet he lived long enough to see another terrible bout of suffering and violence in that region. So it is really his sole legacy as a humanitarian that remains so inspirational and untouched.
All right, Robert in Washington, thank you. Reflecting there on the passing of the former US President, Jimmy Carter. Moving on now, South Korea has declared a week of national mourning for the 179 people killed after a plane crashed at Muan Airport earlier today. The Jeju passenger jet veered off the runway while attempting to land before bursting into flames. The youngest victim was just 3 years old. An investigation into what caused the crash is ongoing. A warning, Graham Stothard's report does contain images you may find distressing.
Rescuers worked into the night, refusing to give up, using dogs and heavy machinery in the search for survivors. The aftermath of one of South Korea's worst aviation disasters ever. This is the terrifying moment the plane coming in to land at Muan Airport, having travelled from Bangkok, skidded across the tarmac, leaving the runway before exploding as it hit a concrete wall. The force of the impact so great, many were thrown from the aircraft. 32 fire trucks were deployed to try to control the flames. At 9 p.m, nearly 12 hours after the crash, the news so many families who had gathered inside the terminal were dreading. Of the 181 people on board, only 2 crew members survived. The youngest victim is believed to be just 3 years old. Condolences have been paid by South Korea's acting president, Choi Sang-muk, and by the CEO of the airline. At a press conference, he said the plane had regular technical checkups with no issues flagged.
I want to give my sincere apology and condolences to those who have lost their lives in the accident and their families. At the moment, it is hard to presume the cause of the accident, and we have to wait for the official investigation result from the authority.
Some officials have suggested that a bird strike affected the landing gear. Flocks of birds are reportedly common in the area at this time of year. And a social media video appears to show an explosion near the wing as the plane came into land. Investigators say they've recovered the flight recorders, the first step in understanding exactly what caused such a tragedy. South Korea has announced a 7-day period of mourning. Graham Stothard, ITV News.
3 people who died attempting to cross the Channel during the busiest Christmas period for migrant crossing since records began. French authorities launched a large-scale rescue operation after a boat carrying around 50 people got into difficulty off the coast of Sangatte this morning. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has successfully had surgery to remove his prostate. He'll remain in hospital for several days. And finally, some sport. And Manchester City won just their second match in 10 games. They beat Leicester City 2-0. Erling Haaland helped the champions seal the win, easing the pressure on their manager. And that is all from us for now, from all of the team here. Good night.
Visibility.